We have some instructions at the front of the classroom about what we're going to be doing before the bell.
It was very difficult.
It was. I got it on every other test.
We have some instructions.
I think I did good though. I definitely didn't get the writing. I definitely didn't get the writing.
Huh? Oh.
I got a 23.
You hear me out.
Oh,
You can't.
oh, dang.
Oh, thank God.
Everything else I've aced almost pretty
Better
good.
make
I
more
got a
copies.
I got
Who's
the
been that?
14.
Stand up.
I was just. He's gonna make us like fix them tomorrow. He's gonna be like,
He's only done it once.
he does it with every vocab. And he let us fix it. I just said how bad the scores are. For once in his life,
We still got the paper copy? I think she said they also have one campus, which I'm gonna do. I think I don't have to do it.
I don't really.
Alright,
You know, it's 40 almost
so
over.
apparently we're out of paper copies of the worksheet. So if you did not get one, we're going to play it up on Canvas.
I can print out more if you would like, but if you do your questions normally on Canvas, you can open it up on Canvas.
We have some instructions at the front of the classroom about what to do before the bell rings.
Yeah, no, I heard it. Light running, wrestling, and
How many laps exactly?
we were like
Oh, I knew it was an hour.
long way in the wrestling room. This one was this one. And it'd be like this
I think
run 3,
last
1,
year,
2, 3.
no,
Like in the same time. This one would be like.
I think freshman or sophomore when we had to go to Gary.
And as soon as we were done,
We also
right,
had to go
now run 3.
go by.
And then now run 2. Now run 3. And he was like, this is very light.
There you go.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
I don't know, but it's
Wednesday. What's today? Wednesday. Let me get attendance real quick.
And there was traffic also.
But if you have not already followed our instructions that are up on our screen, we have got Miss DeYoung here today who's going to be leading us through our last section of Young Goodman Brown. So if you want to give her your attention, she's going to be our main kind of instructor for today. Okay.
Hello, everybody. So, as Ms. Van Beck mentioned, today we are going to be finishing Young Goodman Brown. All right. So, if you look at the worksheets, which we all should have a copy of,
Whether digitally or on paper. If you've got the questions on Canvas, that's totally fine too.
all right.
Yep, everything will be.
The first question is writing down things that you remember about the previous days of Young Goodman Brown. So if you didn't have a chance to get that all the way done, I'm going to briefly review a bit of the story before we get started. So, what's happened so far is we have a character, a Puritan named Young Goodman Brown, or just Goodman Brown, who is married to a wife named Faith. One day, he goes into the woods and meets with the devil. They have a conversation as they walk into the woods, where Goodman Brown finds out that the people around him are not who he thought that they were. He thought they were pious. It turns out they are actually sinful. And at the end of yesterday's reading, he found Faith's pink ribbon. So now he was running around the forest, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, and it. So let's see what happens next.
We are at the top of page 10 if you've got our text opened up.
We are at the top of page 10.
I walked and was lengthened by a chorus, not of human voices, but of all the sounds of the benighted wilderness, pealing in awful harmony
And we are going
together.
to read along
Goodman Brown
with the
cried out,
recording.
and his cry was lost to his own ear by its unison with the cry of the desert. In the interval of silence, he stole forward until the light glared full upon his eyes. At one extremity of an open space, hemmed in by the dark wall of the forest, arose a rock, bearing a rude, natural resemblance either to an altar or a pulpit, and surrounded by 4 blazing pines, their tops aflame, their stems untouched, like candles at an evening meeting. The mass of foliage that had overgrown the summit of the rock was all on fire, blazing high into the night and fitfully illuminating the whole field. Each pendant twig and leafy festoon was in a blaze. As the red light arose and fell, a numerous congregation alternately shone forth, then disappeared in shadow, and again grew, as it were, out of the darkness, peopling the heart of the solitary woods at once. A brave and dark-clad company, quoth Goodman Brown. In truth, they were such. Among them, quivering to and fro between gloom and splendor, appeared faces that would be seen next day at the council board of the province, and others which, Sabbath after Sabbath, looked devoutly heavenward and benignly over the crowded pews from the holiest pulpits in the land. Some affirmed that the lady of the governor was there. At least there were high dames well known to her, and wives of honored husbands, and widows, a great multitude, and ancient maidens, all of excellent repute, and fair young girls who trembled lest their mother should espy them. Either the sudden gleams of light flashing over the obscure field bedazzled Goodman Brown, or he recognized a score of the church members of Salem village, famous for their especial sanctity. Good old Deacon Goodman had arrived, and waited at the skirts of that venerable saint, his reverend pastor. But, irreverently consorting with these grave, reputable, and pious people, these elders of the church, these chaste dames and dewy virgins, there were men of dissolute lives and women of spotted fame, wretches given over to all mean and filthy vice and suspected even of horrid crimes. It was strange to see that the good shrank not from the wicked, nor were the sinners abashed by the saints. Scattered also among their pale-faced enemies were the Indian priests or powwows, who had often scared their native forest with more hideous incantations than any known to English witchcraft. But where is faith? Thought Goodman Brown, and as hope came into his heart, he trembled. Another verse of the hymn arose, a slow and mournful strain, such as the pious love, but joined to words which expressed all that our nature can conceive of sin, and darkly hinted at far more. Unfathomable to mere mortals is the lure of fiends. Verse after verse was sung, and still the chorus of the desert swelled between like the deepest tone of a mighty organ. And with the final peal of that dreadful anthem, there came a sound, as if the roaring wind, the rushing streams, the howling beasts, and every other voice of the unconcerted wilderness were mingling and according with the voice of guilty man in homage to the Prince of all. The 4 blazing pines threw up a loftier flame, and obscurely discovered shadows and visages of horror on the smoke wreaths above the impious assembly. At the same moment, the fire on the rock shot readily forth and formed a glowing arch above its base, where now appeared a figure. With reverence be it spoken, the figure bore no slight similarity, both in garb and manner, to some grave divine of the New England churches. "Bring forth the converts!" cried a voice that echoed through the field and rolled into the forest. At the word, Goodman Brown stepped forth from the shadow of the trees and approached the congregation, with whom he felt a loathful brotherhood by the sympathy of all that was wicked in his heart. He could have well nigh sworn that the shape of his own dead father beckoned him to advance, looking downward from the smoke wreath, while a woman, with dim features of despair, threw out her hand to warn him back. Was it his mother? But he had no power to retreat one step, nor to resist even in thought, when the minister and good old Deacon Goodman seized his arms and led him to the blazing rock. Thither came also the slender form of a veiled female, led between Goody Cloyce, that pious teacher of the catechism, and Martha Carrier, who had received the devil's promise to be queen of hell. A rampant hag was she, and there stood the proselytes beneath the canopy of fire. Welcome, my children, said the dark figure, to the communion of your race. You have found thus young your nature and your destiny. My children, look behind you. They turned, and flashing forth, as it were, in the sheet of flame, the fiend worshippers were seen. The smile of welcome gleamed darkly on every visage. There, resumed the sable form, are all whom ye have reverenced from youth. You deem them holier than yourselves, and shrank from your own sin, contrasting it with their lives of righteousness and prayerful aspirations heavenward. Yet here are they all in my worshipping assembly. This night it shall be granted to you to know their secret deeds, how hoary bearded elders of the church have whispered wanton words to the young maids of their households. How many a woman, eager for widow's weeds, has given her husband a drink at bedtime and let him sleep his last sleep in her bosom. How beardless youths have made haste to inherit their father's wealth. And how fair damsels, blush not, sweet ones, have dug little graves in the garden and bidden me, the sole guest, to an infant's funeral. By the sympathy of your human hearts for sin, ye shall scent out all the places, whether in church, bedchamber, street, field, or forest, where crime has been committed, and shall exult to behold the whole earth one stain of guilt, one mighty blood spot. Far more than this, it shall be yours to penetrate in every bosom the deep mystery of sin, the fountain of all wicked arts, and which inexhaustible supplies more evil impulses than human power, than my power at its utmost can make manifest in deeds. And now, my children, look upon each other. They did so, and by the blaze of the hell-kindled torches, the wretched man beheld his faith, and the wife her husband, trembling before that unhallowed altar.
All right, we're going to pause there and look at question number 2. What does the devil want Goodman Brown to do? What does the devil want Goodman Brown to do here? We don't have any volunteers. I'm going to randomly pick somebody from the seating chart. All right, and we are going with Gracie. Is she here? Okay. Gracie, what does the devil want Goodman Brown to do here? So where are they right now?
Yeah.
Where is Goodman Brown? Right, he is in a glade in the forest, which is where the trees open up and there's more of a flat area. Why is everybody assembled here? Why are there so many people in the middle of this forest?
The devil.
Right, the devil's there. Okay.
Is there like a ritual?
Yes, there's a ritual going on. So, if we look at the passage, Goodman and Faith are referred to as proselytes, which if you look at this definition means converts. So, they are being brought here to be converted to the devil worship, which everyone else is already engaging in. Alright, we're going to take a minute to write that down and then go back to the story. So the devil wants them to join in his worship.
"Lo, there ye stand, my children," said the figure in a deep and solemn tone, almost sad with its despairing awfulness, as if his once angelic nature could yet mourn for our miserable race. Depending upon one another's hearts, he had still hoped that virtue were not all a dream. Now are ye undeceived. Evil is the nature of mankind. Evil must be your only happiness. Welcome again, my children, to the communion of your race. Welcome, repeated the fiend worshippers in one cry of despair and triumph. And there they stood, the only pair, as it seemed, who were yet hesitating on the verge of wickedness in this dark world. A basin was hollowed naturally in the rock. Did it contain water reddened by the lurid light, or was it blood, or perchance a liquid flame? Herein did the shape of the evil dip his hand and prepare to lay the mark of baptism upon their foreheads, that they might be partakers of the mystery of sin, more conscious of the guilt of others, both in deed and thought, than they could now be of their own. The husband cast one look at his pale wife, and Faith at him. What polluted wretches would the next glance show them to each other, shuddering alike at what they disclosed and what they saw? "Faith, Faith," cried the husband, "look up to heaven and resist the wicked one." Whether Faith obeyed he knew not. Hardly had he spoken when he found himself amid calm night and solitude, listening to a roar of the wind, which died heavily away through the forest. He staggered against the rock and felt it chill and damp, while a hanging twig that had been all on fire besprinkled his cheek with the coldest dew.
All right, let's pause there and look at question number 3. What is preventing Goodman Brown from doing what the devil wants?
He's resisting him.
Yes, he's resisting him. Could you tell us how he's resisting him?
If he wasn't able to resist, he wouldn't be saying, calling to his wife and to resist as well.
Right. So one way he resists is by calling to his wife. What does he say to her?
To resist.
Yes. He cries, "Faith, Faith, look up to heaven and resist the wicked one." So, based on that, it seems like what is preventing him from fully committing and joining like everybody else is his love for his wife, right? He still wants to continue his faith. He wants to be a good person, and he wants her to be a good person. Let's take a minute to write down our answers for question number 3, and then we will finish on Goodman Brown. Wrap up your answers and return to the test.
The next morning, young Goodman Brown came slowly into the street of Salem village, staring around him like a bewildered man. The good old minister was taking a walk along the graveyard to get an appetite for breakfast and meditate his sermon, and bestowed a blessing as he passed on Goodman Brown. He shrank from the venerable saint as if to avoid anathema. Old Deacon Goodman was at domestic worship, and the holy words of his prayer were heard through the open window. "What God doth the wizard pray to?" quoth Goodman Brown. Goody Cloyce, that excellent old Christian, stood in the early sunshine at her own lattice, catechizing a little girl who had brought her a pint of morning's milk. Goodman Brown snatched away the child as from the grasp of the fiend himself. Turning the corner by the meeting house, he spied the head of Faith with the pink ribbons, gazing anxiously forth and bursting into such joy at sight of him that she skipped along the street and almost kissed her husband before the whole village. But Goodman Brown looked sternly and sadly into her face and passed on without a greeting. Had Goodman Brown fallen asleep in the forest and only dreamed a wild dream of a witch meeting? Be it so, if you will, but alas, it was a dream of evil omen for young Goodman Brown. A stern, a sad, a darkly meditative, a distrustful, if not a desperate man, did he become from the night of that fearful dream. On the Sabbath day, when the congregation were singing a holy psalm, he could not listen, because an anthem of sin rushed loudly upon his ear and drowned all the blessed strain. When the minister spoke from the pulpit with power and fervid eloquence, and with his hand on the open Bible of the sacred truths of our religion, and of saint-like lives and triumphant deeds, and of future bliss or misery unutterable, then did Goodman Brown turn pale, dreading lest the roof should thunder down upon the grave blasphemer and his hearers. Often, waking suddenly at midnight, he shrank from the bosom of faith. And at morning or eventide, when the family knelt down at prayer, he scowled and muttered to himself and gazed sternly at his wife and turned away. And when he had lived long and was borne to his grave a hoary corpse, followed by Faith, an aged woman, and children and grandchildren, a goodly procession besides neighbors not a few, they carved no hopeful verse upon his tombstone, for his dying hour was gloom.
Alright. And we will look at question number 4. How is Goodman Brown's life changed by his experience in the woods? How is Goodman Brown's life changed by his experience in the woods?
He became miserable and had trust issues.
He's miserable. He has trust issues. All right, what else? How is he feeling? What does he worry about?
Knowing all the sin of things.
Right. He knows that everyone around him is sinful. Right? Let's take a moment to write down our answer, and then we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Wrap up our final answer, and we are going to be doing something called think, pair, share. Has anyone heard that term before? All right, that's okay. So, essentially, we are going to look at the questions on the back, questions 5 and 6. We're going to start by answering them individually. So you're going to have some time to look at each question, to think about it, and to write down your own answer. All right? Then, after we've had enough time to answer, we're going to do small groups. So with your table, you are going to share what you answered, listen to what other people have answered, and think about what the best answer to the question is, right? Every group is going to come up with one thing that they're then going to share with the whole classroom and pick out a representative from the group who is going to share with the classroom, right? So first you are going to individually think about your answer and write it down. Then you're going to pair up with your tables These two tables, the tall ones at the back, can group together if they want. And then we are going to share as a class, where each table will share one answer through a representative. Are there any questions? All right, so we're going to look at questions 5 and 6. So everyone should have something written for both answers before we go into the small groups. All right, we should be finished or almost finished with question 5 and on to question 6. going to take 2 more minutes, and then we're going to move on to the small group discussion. Alright, we're going to finish our thoughts, and then we are going to focus to the front of the classroom. Alright, so we will all be working with the people at our tables. Like I said before, these 2 tables, if they want, can group together or they can stay separate. Every group is going to discuss what each person has answered, listen to the other people's answers, and then decide what they want to share with the class and pick out a representative. Alright, so our first question, number 5. There are several points in the story where Goodman Brown could have made a different decision. What would his life have been like if he stayed home with Faith instead of going into the woods? What would his life have been like if he completed the ceremony instead of changing his mind? Pick one of the 2 options to describe and explain your reasoning with specific details from the story. Then explain whether you believe Brown's original choice or your version would be better for him and why. Discuss as a table, and then we will share as a class.
Oh, there's something. No. My voice sucks from lecturing people. Yep. What do you think the I still honestly don't want to. I never read it different. What do you think? I think knowing that there's a lot better than his life. He says he goes and gets out. It would be 10 times worse. I think that him staying home would actually be better for him.
He would have been happy and just not know anything. That's what I said.
But then at the end, it's just like,
If he would have went through with it, he was even guilty that he's now insinuating he was going to go well. Everyone said, which is.
Yeah. He would have been much better at his
What, the line?
sure if you could, I don't know.
What if even able to transfer states?
We're going to take 1 more minute to solidify our answers and pick out representatives, and then we're going to share.
His wife would have
Well, I just need it on my paper. I don't see I'll read it.
stops him from
Just question 5. We're not doing question 6 yet. Just question 5.
I'll just take it. That's just.
All right. Would any group like to start with sharing what decision they picked and what his life would have been like, and would his life have been better or worse? Would any group like to start? All right, fair enough. We are going to start with this group at the back.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, I guess I'm speaking, right? So,
And if you're not in this group, we are going to be listening. All right, we're not going to be talking.
the main thought that we had was that he would be better off if he had stayed at home, because it would be better for him emotionally for him to be just blissfully ignorant of his people's sins.
All right. So the idea that it is better to be blissfully ignorant, which he would have been if he had not entered the woods. All right. So let's do. Did you end up going together, or?
No.
All right. Let's do your table. All right. What did you pick, and what did you decide?
I put that if he
This is
stayed
Sue's.
home with Faith, then he would have had a better. Well, he could have had a better life. I put that he could have possibly stopped Faith from joining the sinful activities and something wrong with him. But also, he might have been living a life of deception because he wouldn't know the people around him were sinful. But at the same time, if he actually believed in God and believed in that stuff, and that I feel like God may have been able to show him that they were sinful with God.
All right. A lot of really good points here. That was really good. All right. So, on the beneficial side of staying home instead of going into the woods, he would have been happier with his wife for the rest of their lives. But on the other hand, he would have been living not knowing the truth, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So, is it better to be happy, or is it better to know the truth? All right, let's go to this table. What did you pick, and what did you decide?
I said Goodman's life could have been different because he wouldn't have known everyone was sinful and he would have had a trust in his village. And then I said, but since he went to the woods, he no longer sees good in the people he once looked up to. I believe he should have never gone into the woods and stayed with Faith because he wanted to see people so badly that he would have lived a happier life.
All right. If he had not entered into the woods, he would have been happier. He would have been more trusting. Of course, there's always the question of, is it good to be trusting when you don't know all the information? That's one of the questions that this story raises. All right, so he would have been happier. He would have been more trusting. All right, this table, what did you pick and what did you say?
He picked that he would be liked you more and tricked.
If what happened? If you made what decision?
He stayed with his wife, and he would be a lot less miserable, and
All right.
he would understand people less.
So he would be less, if he stayed home with Faith, he'd be less miserable. If we look at this end paragraph, this is a miserable man. He isn't happy with the people around him. He isn't happy with the people. He isn't happy with himself. He is dying hour with gloom. If he stayed home, he wouldn't be this miserable all the time. All right, and our last table. What did you pick?
It's really just going off everybody else. Okay, staying at home. You'd be less miserable, obviously. You would know that.
All right. And do you think it would be better for him to have had this misery knowing, or to be blissfully ignorant?
Probably ignorant.
How come?
Very sad. He was happy before.
All right. He was happy before. Why can't he continue being happy? All right. So we are going to now discuss question number 6. Puritanism plays an important role in 2 pieces of literature we have studied this unit. Verses Upon the Burning of Our House by Anne Bradstreet and Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Based on their writings, compare and contrast Bradstreet and Hawthorne's perspectives on Puritanism. Then give at least one reason why learning about the beliefs of early American colonists is still important today. All right, so for this particular question, I want you to think about 4 things as a group, and I'll be randomly calling on you to share parts of it. I want you to think about what is Bradstreet's perspective, what is Hawthorne's perspective, how are they different, and one important reason to learn about these things. All right, those are the 4 things that you need to discuss. We're going to take about 3 minutes to discuss these things.
For me, Bradstreet is a statement that's more like optimistic. You should continue in your faith for some kind of need or goal or afterlife. Hawthorne is like, you already know all everyone sins, so won't even bother in being faithful.
I told you that.
She made it more positive and hopeful. She made it seem like God was in it. But in Hawthorne, she made it as if Puritans didn't see the evil in people. And they were just ignorant of everything.
Skylar was to see it, to believe it.
It just makes it seem like Puritans are less aware of what's going on. That they would rather be ignorant and try to bear the best out of other people's.
There's one big question we haven't answered. Where the heck is Judge out?
He probably takes a day off. Just ran for the days.
All right, we're going to take 1 more minute and then we're going to share.
Seems like what? Every D1 school there is. That's the only reason why I went is for athletics. Huh? Freak football.
All right.
Everybody here ever
We are
gets a
going to
scholarship.
focus
Ever.
towards the front, and we are going to quiet voices. All right, so first, let's start with this group. All right, what is Anne Bradstreet's perspective on Puritanism that we can see in her poem?
She makes it seem more hopeful, like God is the answer to their solution to the problem.
Okay, so in her faith, because she was a Puritan, she finds hope and that she believes God is the solution to all of her problems. All right. Now, let's do group at the tall brown table. What is Nathaniel Hawthorne's perspective on Puritanism?
I kind of just put that like in his story, the Goodman Brown, he like loses his faith, so it kind of makes it seem like it's not as like hopeful, and that it's not going to keep his faith.
So, from Hawthorne's perspective, the Puritan faith is less powerful, right? It can't protect him from everything. Let's do tall metal table.
We come back to this.
All right. All right. And table by the door. Can you compare how Bradstreet and Hawthorne's perspectives on Puritanism are similar? What do they agree about? All right, if you couldn't think of anything they agreed about, what do they disagree about?
The Bradstreet one was more like anything you do, or if you do these roles, anything you do really, well, you'll end up in heaven, while the Hawthorne one was no matter what you do, you're a sinner and you're not going to end up.
I really like that. So from Bradstreet's perspective, everything you do is leading you towards heaven. And from Hawthorne's perspective, everything you do is leading you away from heaven. All right. And this group. Why is it important that we still learn about what these early American colonist writers believed? Why is that important for us today?
Well, Puritanism can be compared to modern day Christianity, which is a core belief in many American values.
All right. So that's right. Puritanism is a type of Christianity, which is still very prevalent in today's society. And this group, can you give another reason why it's still important that we learn about the beliefs of these early Americans?
I put learning about beliefs helps us understand values and history.
All right. It helps us understand values and history. So if we understand what these people believed, we'll understand more about the decisions that they made. All right. We had a really great discussion today. If you have completed your worksheet, you can turn it in at the tray. If you have not, you can fill it out tonight and turn it in during the next class period. Until the bell rings, you can talk quietly. Oh,
Nope.
all right, never mind.
Yeah, so it was
Thank you again
1:36
for the
right now.
discussion.